regardless of how much you plan for garden success, you're going to have gardening failures. It's inevitable. It's going to be something that you didn't anticipate, and it often happens when you least expect it. But all of those failures can actually be a benefit because you'll learn from them and you'll get better at gardening. Join me today as I share with you some of the things that have gone wrong in my garden. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and in my more than 3 decades of gardening, I've had more than my fair share of failures. I think this is one of those topics that we gardeners don't talk a lot about. I don't know if we're embarrassed or we feel like we don't want to share our deficiencies with another gardener, but I think it's helpful to share failures because when we do, we find out that a lot of us have the same things going wrong in our garden. And if you can get information from somebody else before it happens in your garden, you might be able to avoid it. Like this area right here. I love this spot. It's starting to fade right now, but this is oregano. The oregano in this bed has done fantastic this year. It's been beautiful, it's been covered by bees, and it's something that went wrong. The purpose of this bed is to support this apple tree. I've been pruning this apple tree to become an espalier, a flat form that rests up against the wall of this garage. I've been pruning branches for a couple years now, but I have more branches to prune, like this lower one here. And there are leaves that need to be exposed to the sun, but the height and the quantity of this oregano is really interfering with the whole process. This bed looks like it's an oregano bed now, not an apple tree espalier bed. So this oregano in this bed ended up being a mistake, and now I'm gonna have to cut it, take it out. I'll move it to another area because it is a beautiful plant. Because it's interfering with the primary purpose of this bed, it needs to go. This bed has had its share of failures. The reason I have this welded wire fencing here to protect this tree is because of my garden dog Mala. Shortly after I got her a couple years ago, I had an established tree about this size, and she ate it. She chewed on the branches, she pulled it apart, and I had to put a fence around it to keep her out. Now, I'm finally back to where I was a couple years ago, and the tree is not growing as well as it could be because of this plant. A great plan for a ground cover, but it ended up getting too bushy. I had a major failure with these apple trees this year. These are columnar apple trees. They're not going to get very wide. They'll get about 5 or 6 feet tall and be covered with apples. That was the plan. I put this tree in last year. It got established pretty well. It survived my winter, and this spring it was growing great. And then almost literally overnight, the leaves started turning brown, and within just a couple days, the plant was dead. I'm guessing that it was about the time that the angle of the sun was just right and the heat of the day was just right, that all that sun and all that heat and the reflective energy fried this young apple tree. So my plan to have these columnar apples cast a little bit of shade against my greenhouse totally failed. Well, almost. That tree is a new tree that I planted this year because the one last year also died. It's still alive. It's done pretty well. I have deer. I put up some bird netting around these plants to protect them. And one night, the deer pushed aside this netting and actually ate the top of that tree. So, a couple failures in this area. Is it going to stop me from using the columnar apples? No, but probably not in this location. So I'm getting ready to move that plant to a better location, and then maybe next year I'll get some more trees and decide if I want to have a different design plan. I love different design elements in the garden, like this spinner. I love the colors, I love the way it spins, but you may notice that only that side is spinning, this one isn't. I live in a high wind area during the summer, and I thought this was a relatively heavy-duty spinner, but this one got going so fast and the wind was so strong that it basically tore itself apart, hitting the side of the support stand. So now this side doesn't spin. Still looks nice in my garden, but it's kind of a half spinner, not a full spinner. The failure was not fully anticipating what the wind would do to something that I'd never used before. This is my garden dog, Lika. She's still a puppy. She's got lots of energy. I love her. She's really smart. And this is Mala. And together, they like to wrestle and play and run through my beds. This has never been a problem I've had before, but now, together, it's a problem. My new stone bed just happens to be at the perfect height for both dogs to jump inside, to dig, but more importantly, they use this as kind of a launching point to jump off of, to run and play with the other. So now, the failure of making this too low means I'm going to have to add additional layers to make it higher. So the size of this bed is wrong. It's not tall enough. I can fix that by adding new layers, but I'm not going to change the location. That also was a failure. It's okay though. This is one of those learning moments. I know that animals can get into your beds. I just didn't anticipate that this was going to be a central part of their play activities. My garden is growing great this year. The plants are green and productive, but it could have been better. This cucumber bed had a lot of plants in the middle of the bed, growing up along the twine to the top of my cattle panel hoop trellis, but the dogs figured out that they could jump through the opening at the end and explore, and in the process trample everything underneath. So while this bed has been productive, I probably lost half of the plants that were in it. It was similar in this melon bed. They trampled a lot of leaves. I don't think I lost any plants, but the plants that are in here didn't grow as well because they were trampled. And my pumpkin patch also had some issues as well, as Lika in particular found out that she could dig, and that disrupted a lot of the growth of these wonderful plants. I planted Ozark Beauty strawberries in this bed and in that bed, an ever-bearing variety that I expected to do well in its first year. But I've had no flowers and no strawberries. I'm a little flummoxed as to why that happened. I had the runners cut off early on, the plants got established, and then nothing. Now I'm letting the runners fill in the bed. I'm not sure the level of this failure yet, except I didn't get fruit this year. I'll leave them in the ground for next year and see if maybe next year is the magic year to get fruit for the first time. I know why I didn't get strawberries in this bed, another failure. It's because of the variety that I chose to put in. These are Cavendish strawberries, a June-bearing variety. And in my part of Colorado, June-bearing strawberries just don't do well. I've gotten a lot of flowers on this plant early in the year, but because of the crazy winters and springs I have, the flowers always fall off or fail to pollinate, and I haven't gotten strawberries for years with these plants. So I'm taking these plants out. I've given them a chance over years, but they're not producing. They have to go. And in their place, I'm putting these strawberries, TriStar. This has been a great success in my garden this year. A brand new variety I haven't grown before. It's been very productive. It's a delicious strawberry. And now I'll take some of these runners and move them over to that bed as soon as I clear it out and get rid of those old, non-productive Cavendish plants. By trying new things and new varieties, that's one of the advantages when a failure happens, is maybe you discover the best thing to go in place of the plant that didn't work. This tree is one of my failures that might end up being a great success. About 3 years ago, I put a peach tree in this spot. I ordered it from Fedco, a company that will allow you to choose the rootstock for the tree. And I chose a rootstock that would be very hardy in my Colorado winters. Well, sure enough, the rootstock did great and survived, but the tree didn't. It died after one of my winters. I was ready to dig it up, order a new tree, but then I noticed that there was some growth coming from that lower portion, from the rootstock. So I thought I'd give it a try, see what happened. And sure enough, this tree has developed, loaded with peaches. And these peaches are delicious. And I know that this tree will survive my winter. So with a little better pruning and control going into next year, I have no doubt it may end up being the most productive peach tree in my garden. It's not a failure, it's just taking my plan in a different direction. And that's a good way to look at the lessons we can learn from the failures in our garden. Don't just look at it as something that went wrong, look at it as an opportunity to learn about what went right. And that may change your plan, it may change the direction of your gardening, and it may end up giving you delicious peaches when you least expected it. There's a lot we can learn about the mistakes in our garden. If you want to learn more, watch one of these videos next. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.